Hello and welcome to Sethaldor's World of Warcraft Guides. This one is going to be our final Mage Guide per se, and this is going to be our Glyph Guide on Frost Glyphing. We are going to do PvE and PvP Frost Glyphing. Keep in mind everything mentioned in this video is simply a suggestion of mine. You should take everything said and tailor it to your own specific playstyle, as that is the only way to be truly optimal, as it'll just feel weird playing someone else's suggestion that you don't agree with. So, with that in mind, and also with my usual setup in mind, let's go through these glyphs. I'm going to do PvE first, summarize that at the end, then do PvP glyphing first, summarize that at the end for Frost Mages. I wonder... Oh, darn. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and hit this up, huh? So, for Frost Mages in the Prime Glyph tree, you could look at Frostfire Bolt, which I would suggest not taking, because that'll add a damage over time component to Frostfire Bolt, preventing you from getting Fingers of Frost bonus, which is the primary DPS... Oh, and that's my phone, folks. Primary DPS impact of Frost is getting that Fingers of Frost. Everything else looks like fire. Molten Armor you could grab because 2% increased crit chance is definitely a good thing for every spec if you do use Molten Armor, which I personally do. I don't have Arcane Barrage, Arcane Blast. Alright, here we go. Here's the Frost glyphs. Glyph of Cone of Cold increases damage of your Cone of Cold by 25%. Pretty good, not bad for a PvE scenario, except generally you're not close enough to use Cone of Cold effectively. At least I'm not. So increasing its damage output is quite debatable in a PvE scenario. Deep Freeze. Your Deep Freeze deals an additional 20% damage. Holy freaking crap, are you serious? That thing is a nuke in itself already, and it can do 20% more damage to the boss? Holy freaking Jesus. Duh, take that one. Next, we also have Glyph of Frostbolt, which increases crit chance of Frostbolt by 5%. Awesome. More critting is always good critting. And finally, we have Glyph of Ice Lance, which increases damage of Ice Lance by 5%, which is awesome, because you're going to be using that every time you get Fingers of Frost and Deep Freeze happens to be on cooldown. Also, you could look at Mage Ward, which will help you regenerate mana more, but generally, as Frost, I actually don't have mana issues in a PvE scenario, shockingly enough. I know, right? So, it's pretty self-explanatory which of these three primes you're going to be taking for a PvE Frost Mage. You're going to be taking Glyph of Deep Freeze, Glyph of Frostbolt, and Glyph of Ice Lance for the increased 20% damage, the increased 5% crit, and the increased 5% damage in that order. That is right, folks. So, that means we are going to head straight on down to Major Glyphs for Frost PvE Mages. You could look at Glyph of Blink, which I would highly discourage for PvE, as 5 extra yards in PvE is not going to make a life or death difference most of the time. Glyph of Evocation, always a nice one to look at, always a recommended one, as 40% of your total health is always a good thing to be able to give yourself. Helps the healers with their mana, helps you stay alive. Next, you can also look at Frost Nova, goodness me. However, I would again advise against it, as guess what? Bosses can't be frozen by Frost Nova, so that doesn't really matter. In the event that it's a boss like Overlord Sarfang, if you remember ICC, then yes, this could be potentially helpful. But that is ridiculously situational, if you don't mind me saying. So, in order to have a well-rounded glyph setup, you may not want to grab that. However, I would suggest having a few Dust of Disappearance on you if you're super hardcore about raiding, so that you can switch in between glyphs when you need to, for things like that. Next, we have Glyph of Icy Veins, which removes slowing effects on yourself. Maybe? Because it also removes cast time slowing effects? So, like, if a boss throws a disease on you, disease of slow, crappy casterness. Oh, hey, guess what? They're not going to cleanse you. Bam! Icy Veins didn't mean crap, son! So, that's kind of cool. Not too epic there, though. Glyph of Invisibility, stay away from that. Shouldn't be using Mana Shield. That'll reduce how much mana you have to DPS. Don't have slow arcane power. Ice Barrier, this is pretty cool. Helps your survivability in a PvE scenario. I don't know if it's super major to have this in a PvE scenario. It's just kind of nice to have. Helps your healers out if you're a nice little mage like me who likes his healers, wants to stay on their good side, don't get blacklisted on Healbot. So, you could definitely look at Glyph of Ice Barrier as a viable option. Glyph of Ice Block helps you have Frost Nova ready. I already said Frost Nova plus boss equals nothing, so you really don't want to look at that. And finally, Glyph of Polymorph. As you might recall in my other two Glyph guides, I highly recommend Glyph of Polymorph in the PvE spec. I'm going to do that as well in this one, as it helps you avoid looking like a tard who doesn't know how to polymorph because of someone else's errors. Say a DK Pestilences before your polymorph goes off. Guess what? Who's going to get blamed for the polymorph failing? The guy casting the spell, or the guy who actually broke the spell? You. The one who cast the spell. Why? Because the raid leader only knows that you're responsible for getting it off. He doesn't know the other guy stopped you from getting it off, and I bet you almost anything he doesn't really care, because you all wiped because the polymorph didn't go off, and you were the one responsible for it. So, this will help you save your group and help you look less like a tard because of someone else's actions. So, just get it for your own sanity. I would recommend Glyph of Polymorph, Glyph of Ice Barrier, and either Glyph of Icy Veins or Glyph of Evocation. Your call as to which of those two you like. I personally go for Evocation, Ice Barrier, Polymorph, if I ever go PvE Frost. So, finally, for PvE Frost Miners, this is going to be the same as the other two Mage specs that I did Glyph videos for, which is going to be everything is crap except 1 or 2. That's actually most miners, not to be harsh. Glyph of Mirror, actually, oh, scratch that. Everything is crap for a Frost Mage in the miner section. Awesome! Because your mirror images already cast Frostbolt, so they already get all your Frost bonuses, so you can't even say minor Glyph mirror image is a good thing for you. Ouch. Sucks to be a Frost Mage sometimes. Glyph of Armors, 30-minute increase, big whoop. Arcane Brilliance, 50% mana reduction, big whoop. Conjuring, 50% mana reduction, big whoop. Penguin and Monkey, all cosmetic. Slowfall is the only one that you could even debate has any decent utility, i.e. you don't need a reagent to Slowfall. If you recall on ZA, I know, whoa, back in BC patches, hold your horses there, buddy. But anyway, the usually used as second boss, the bird guy, the air guy, there was some fall damage issues there. Also, in Throne of Tide's first boss, she has some fall damage components too. If you can slow fall, hey, awesome, sweet. You no longer have to worry about the fall damage. Hey, raid lead, you don't have to put your priest on levitate duty. I can slow fall without a reagent. How much do you love me? There you go. Got in with the raid lead. Ain't you awesome? That leaves you with 2 free miners. I would recommend staying away from Mirror Image because that's absolutely useless. The other 2 are Glyph of whatever the hell you want. So, quick summary for PvE Frost Mage Glyph setup. I would highly recommend Glyph of Slowfall for your miners. The other 2 will be Glyph of whatever the hell you want out of the miners. I would stay away from Mirror Image though. That doesn't even help you cosmetically. Next, I would hit the Majors. My recommendation for PvE Frost Mage Major Glyph setup would be a Major Glyph of Polymorph, Major Glyph of Ice Barrier, and Major Glyph of Evocation. And finally, with our Prime Glyphs for PvE Frost Mage Glyph setup, I would highly recommend the amazing Deep Freeze Prime Glyph of 20% increased damage. Holy freaking crap. 5% increased crit chance on your Frostbolt. Let's see, you're going to be spamming Frostbolt. 5% more crit chance on that. Sweet. And Ice Lance. When I'm not casting Frostbolt, what am I doing? Casting Ice Lance. 5% more damage on Ice Lance. Delicious. So absolutely yes, grab that too. Alright, now that we got through that ridiculousness, we are going to be hitting the PvP aspect of Frost, where Frost actually is good! Woo! What for the Frost Mages, son? Alright, don't want to look at Glyph of Frostbolt, because you want the slow effect on your... Sorry. Not going to look at Glyph of Frost Firebolt, because you want the slow effect of Frost Firebolt in the event that you use it off of a Brain Freeze. So, we're going to be looking at Cone of Cold, Deep Freeze, Frostbolt, and Ice Lance for primes again. Now, the only difference, you are going to be using Frostbolt a lot, and you're going to be using Ice Lance even more in PvP than in PvE. Holy crap, and you thought you used it a lot before. So the damage bonus on Ice Lance is going to be all that more important. The crit on Frostbolt is going to be just as important in PvE. However, something you might say is, well, you better not say Deep Freeze is going to be a good one, because you can't get the damage component on that. Yeah, you're right. You can't get the damage component of Deep Freeze in a PvP scenario because, hey, players are freezable. So what does that mean? Probably want to grab Glyph of Cone of Cold instead. 25% increased damage on Cone of Cold. Guess what? You're going to be using Cone of Cold a lot more too, because that's a guaranteed freeze for you, buddy. So for PvP Prime Frost Mage Glyphing, you are going to want to grab Glyph of Cone of Cold, Glyph of Frostbolt, and Glyph of Ice Lance. Ooh yeah, getting all frosty up in there. Woo! Alright, let's go hit Majors now. What do you say, folks? Glyph of Blink, definitely more viable. 5 extra yards in PvP will make or break a life sometimes. Next, you could hit Glyph of Evocation, which will provide you a 40% heal, which is ridiculously uber. If you don't take this, you're crazy. Also, Glyph of Frost Nova, very, very, very awesome for a Frost Mage in PvP, because your Frost Nova freeze will now last for 20% more additional damage, which means they're frozen 20% longer, which means you survive 20% longer. Yeah! Going all night long now with this glyph. Alright, next one we want to look at is Icy Veins Major Glyph, which removes movement and cast time slowing effects, which is awesome. If you're the flag carrier, you can't afford to be slowed down. You need that Icy Veins ready. If you need to get away from that rogue, you need to have that Icy Veins ready with this glyph. Ooh, baby, those rogues. Invisibility, you could debate it. You could get in that flag room faster and out faster. You shouldn't be using Mana Shield unless you're Arcane. You don't have any of those spells. Ice Barrier is going to be pretty good. 30% extra absorption is going to mean 30% extra survivability provided by that. But keep in mind, that's 30% more damage that needs to be done before you get the Shattered Barrier freeze effect. So, yes, it's good. How good is it? Not as good as most people assume it is. It's still really damn good, though. Don't get me wrong. And finally, Glyph of Ice Block, which would be viable, resets the cooldown of Frost Nova every time you use Ice Block. Keep in mind, Ice Block's got a fairly decent cooldown, so maybe not the best thing you want to look at. So, as for Major PvP Frost Mage Glyphing, wow! What are we going to pick? Well, definitely Major Glyph of Evocation. There's no question about that. Definitely Major Glyph of Frost Nova. That 20% more endurance on the freeze is going to be real helpful. You can believe me there. And finally, last major, I would personally say grab a Glyph of Ice Barrier. That is definitely debatable. If there is one point in this video that is debatable, it is going to be that one. That is majorly debatable, picking Ice Barrier over Icy Veins over Blink. Honestly, Blink isn't going to be that uber amazing. So, that is definitely debatable. As I stated in the beginning of this video, tailor everything to your personal play style. If you don't do that, it's going to feel unnatural, and if it feels unnatural, you won't be able to do as well as you could if it felt more natural. Finally, we hit minor glyphs. Same thing applies from PvE to PvP. They all suck. Mirror Image Miner, completely useless to you. Slowfall, probably the only one with actual utility to you, because you can get from Lumber Mill to Blacksmith to mine easily in AB. Other little places to sprinkle Slowfall in there, such as AVs, there's locations. Tobarad, there's locations. Just things like that to throw Slowfall in there. Other than that, the other two slots are going to be Glyph of whatever the hell you want. So, as a summary, for PvP Frost Mages, I recommend for PvP Minor Frost, you are going to grab Glyph of Slowfall and 2 glyphs of whatever the hell you want for minors. For Majors, I would recommend grabbing Glyph of Ice Barrier, which is tentative. Feel free to change that to Icy Veins at your discretion to playstyle. And finally, definitely in Majors, grab Glyph of Frost Nova and Glyph of Evocation. So those are going to be 2 very important major ones for PvP Frost. And finally, for our PvP Primes, the big uber baddies are going to be Glyph of Cone of Cold for the damage increase, Glyph of Frostbolt for the crit increase, and finally Glyph of Ice Lance for the, again, damage increase. So, that is PvP and PvE glyph setup for Frost Mages. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please thumb up, please favorite, please recommend me to your friends, and please subscribe for more Sethy goodness. This has been Sethaldor on the server Blade's Edge in the Guild Sacrilege on the character Arctic Shatter on the topic of Frost Mage Glyphing. You guessed it, folks. This was real fun to make for you. Can't wait to put another one out. Yeah. So I'll see you guys next time.